Welcome back to Fourth and Inches Magazine with Kerry Thompson, owner, editor in chief. If you're wondering what music we've been playing in the background or in the opening scenes, it's been J. Cole's new CD. Guys, you may need to actually check that out. It's a really, really good CD. Might be album of the year. So you'll hear more of that as the podcast continues on. You can follow us online on Twitter at Fourth and Inches Mag, where you're also going to see where we're very interactive, and be prepared to defend your point. We will listen to everybody's opinion, but you have to be prepared to defend that point. And we're classy here, so you don't have to worry about us insulting you about your point. So let's hop back into it as far as with games that happened this weekend that could influence the BCS. We're going to start with Georgia and Auburn. Who knew that Georgia was going to destroy Auburn the way that they did? This helped Boise's case because the more that Georgia wins, the more that win against Georgia makes Boise look as a legit opportunity for them to actually play for the BCS championship game. But I mean, Auburn laid an egg. People thought that this was actually going to be a good game because the Georgia-Auburn rivalry is always pretty good, because Auburn goes to Georgia and takes their recruits. So, but this game wasn't even close. Aaron Murray, 14 of 18 for 224 yards and 4 touchdowns. He was great. I mean, you just really can't put a measuring stick on how good Aaron Murray's been over these past 8 games. Since Georgia lost the first 2, they've been on a tear, and he's been absolutely amazing over that time frame. He has a great young wide receiver core, and they're going to grow with him. I mean, Georgia has all the talent in the world. We've just been wondering what Mark Richt has been actually doing with that talent because he just hasn't been winning. Isaiah Crowell is definitely SEC Freshman of the Year. He had 24 carries for 132 yards and a touchdown. But I guess the real focus here is what's going on with Auburn, coming off of a year where they had Superman playing quarterback of Cam Newton. He just could not be stopped regardless of what happened. He was just unstoppable. But you got Clint Mosley, who's playing now 11 of 22, 140 yards, but 106 of those yards were to Emory Blake. But my big question is how is it possible that you only get Dyer 13 carries for 48 yards, and as a team, you only have 25 rushes for 51 yards? Dyer is a stud. Dyer needs more touches, and he will not be what you need him to be with only 13 carries for 48 yards. You have to slow that game down. Georgia was absolutely dominating. Clint Mosley throws a pick 6. By then, the game is out of hand, 28-7. So you kind of got to look at it as what's really going on with Auburn's offense. Another major question that we're asking is, what's wrong with Auburn's defense? Auburn's always been known to have a very stout defense, great linebackers, great defensive line play, and good enough secondary play to sustain if they don't get pressure. Auburn's put numerous draft picks in the lottery as far as with defensive back, linebackers, defensive linemen, and I'm just not understanding what exactly is happening in this time frame to keep Auburn from being effective defensively. They gave up 528 yards to Georgia, but it's really simple. The problem is Ted Roof, and until Ted Roof either gets it together or gets out of there, Auburn's defense is going to struggle. They do not have the corners to play the type of coverage that they play. They play a zone coverage more times than not, and they're not physical enough to even play man-to-man coverage. They're not blitzing a lot, not getting a lot of pressure. It's like they have a very timid defense, and timid defenses don't really solve a lot of problems in the SEC. They just get ran over, and that's exactly what's happening to Auburn. I don't understand. Gene Chizik was our defensive coordinator at Texas when we won the 2005 BCS championship game. I don't know what's happened. Like, he knows the type of players that he needs. I think that was just the benefit of having the great athletes that we had down there that season. Michael Griffin, we just had a slew of players all over the field that just made plays, and they succeeded in Gene Chizik's defense. Gene Chizik is an excellent defensive coordinator, and I think it's about high time that he starts to take over that defense in order to make them more aggressive and to coach them in a better manner than Ted Roof has been doing, because he's just not getting the job done. But switching over to Georgia's defense has been absolutely amazing this year. They only allowed 195 total yards against Auburn, and defensively, they're fifth in rushing. They're 15th in pass defense, and they're also 12th in scoring defense. This is a big improvement from the Georgia defenses of the past 2 or 3 years, where they've actually just been mediocre with great talent, by the way, but just mediocrely coached. So Mark Richt may succeed in living to see another season and coach another season over at Georgia. He's a great coach. He's a great guy. I just don't know what's been happening as of late. I think Georgia's defense is actually legit. And if they continue to play the way that they've been playing, that 3-4 is hard to block, regardless of what scheme it is. It's just tough. So look for, whoever comes out of the SEC West, they definitely have a fight on their hands taking on Georgia right now, because Georgia right now may be playing the best football in the country. And I know it's tough to say and tough to see for many other SEC fans, but I mean, it looks like that's what's happening. Um, with that happening, like I said, it looks like it's helping Boise become a better team, will look like a better team, because they went down there and completely dominated Georgia. And this is what we're going, that now we're going to go over to Boise. I mean, Boise loses 36-35 to TCU, so they no longer, are undefeated or have a stake to say, hey, let us finally get a shot at the big boys. And it's been field goal kicking the past 2 years. I mean, Dan Goodell, he's a freshman. I mean, you put the game on the line after your senior quarterback drives you down the field after that phantom pass interference call, but it kind of looks like it was karma that caught up with Dan Goodell, and he wasn't able to actually complete the kick. I mean, he misses a 39-yard field goal wide right. And this is the same thing that happened with Kyle Brotzman that helped Nevada escape Boise with the win, or helped Nevada escape that with that win in Nevada last year, when Brotzman missed 2 field goals, one to win the game and one to actually tie the game in overtime. So, I mean, it's just really tough for Boise, man. They lost. They had a lot of injuries. The secondary was depleted. DJ Harper got destroyed on a hit late in the game, which caused for Drew Wright to come into the game. Drew Wright was playing well, 3 carries, 20 yards. I mean, that's a great average to try to seal the game, but he fumbles the ball and gives Casey Pahal a great opportunity to actually come in and cement his legacy at TCU after Andy Dalton leaves. Pahal was great in this game, and in that particular situation, he threw the pass to Brandon Carter, who had absolutely amazing catch over the top of the Boise defender in order to actually bring that game within the 1 point. And also Paul Hall's decision to throw the ball to Josh Boyce and let him fight his way into the end zone and actually take the lead in the game. You can't say enough about Gary Patterson's fortitude at the end of that game. I mean, it really took some major guts in order to make that play call against Boise State. But he saw that his team was hot, and that's what great coaches do. When you see your team's hot, it kind of like all conventional coaching goes out the window, and you go with your team instead of your gut. So Gary Patterson, I mean, I tip my hat to you, because that was an excellent play call. And honestly speaking, I mean, we look forward to seeing that in the Big 12 next year with TCU playing those type of games. Honestly, the Big 12 should have went after Boise too. This rivalry should not stop. I mean, Boise State and TCU, I mean, that is really a great rivalry, and I think that they need to try to, instead of the Big East making a move for Boise, they may need to try to make a move. For the Big 12 may need to try to make a move for Boise and try to, keep that rivalry going. Paul Hall, like I said, perfect game. 473 yards, 24 for 37 with 5 touchdowns, only 1 interception. On third down in this game, he was awesome, 6 for 9, 189 yards and 2 touchdowns. And this has been something he's been doing all year, all season. On third down, he has 13 touchdowns, only 1 interception. You had Josh Boyce, 5 receptions, 163 yards and 3 touchdowns. Brandon Carter, 4 catches, 120 yards, 2 touchdowns, none bigger than the one at the end of the game. Kellen Moore, like I feel so sorry for the kid to have your national championship dreams doused because of kickers after you've done your job at the end of the game, driving the team down the field. I mean, it's tough, but I mean, it's the life of a quarterback. You know, you can do everything you can do, but the game ultimately comes down on guys catching the ball or guys kicking the ball for you in order to get points. Kellen Moore, awesome. 28 for 38, 320 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. 22 straight games with at least 2 touchdowns. I mean, the guy is good. He's a winner. And he'll be a good NFL quarterback as well, better than some of these other guys that they are giving this big major hype to, which is Andrew Luck. I mean, and we'll get into that in a second. DJ Harper was great in this game as well. 24 carries, 125 yards. But again, he got knocked out at the end of the game. Big hit, very big hit from Tank Carter from TCU, outside linebacker, and he was out of the game. And that ended up being very big for Boise because of ball security. When your top 2 running backs are out, and Doug Martin with a foot, and you also had DJ Harper knocked out with a concussion, I mean, this is what's going to happen. It makes you wonder as far as with Chris Peterson and the depth that he has there. But that team's been decimated by injuries, and for them to still be winning and doing what they've been doing, I mean, it's a really big shout out to Chris Peterson. So one of the best two of the best coaches in the land, I'm sorry, with Gary Patterson and Chris Peterson. I mean, you can't really say enough about their programs and the job that they've been doing with those programs, not getting the type of talent that other teams and other schools have been getting. But maybe that changes now with them coming to bigger conferences. But speaking of bigger conferences and conference alignments, we have a very big, very, very big game in the recently expanded Pac-12, which really decides who's going to go to that Pac-12 championship game. When we had when we had Oregon, number 7, actually going to Stanford to play the Stanford Cardinals. In this game, basically, I mean, outplayed. Stanford outplayed in every aspect of the game when it came down to what mattered. The yardage was pretty close. Stanford, Oregon, I mean, the yardage speaks for itself. But in the big time, big game situations, I mean, you got to look at it. I mean, 387 yards for Oregon, 385 yards for Stanford. But again, when you have 5 turnovers, I mean, who are you going to beat? It doesn't matter who you're playing. If you turn the ball over 5 times and the other team only turns it over twice, you're looking at a +3 turnover margin that you're going to have to try to overcome. Darren Thomas outplayed Andrew Luck. Whoever thought you'd have said that? Darren Thomas, 11 for 17, 155 yards, 3 touchdowns, but the more important number was 0, which was the interceptions that Darren Thomas threw in this game. Andrew Luck, 27 for 41, 256 yards, 3 touchdowns with 2 interceptions, none bigger than the pick 6 that Lacombo took back to the house. I just don't. I mean, Andrew Luck's stock is dropping tremendously. Yes, he overcame the pick 6 that he threw against USC, but the way that his offense was playing and the way that the defense for Oregon was playing, I just didn't see him being able to make that up. I mean, again, 5 turnovers to 2 turnovers to Oregon. Yes, Stanford was missing Owusu. They were also missing Zach Ertz with a knee injury, but you can't discredit the job that Boyette and Pleasant did on the other tight ends, Fleener and Tulolo. I mean, they were blanketed pretty much the entire game. They did not have great games against Oregon, and Oregon's defense was getting much pressure, great pressure on Andrew Luck, and influenced a lot of his throws. LaMichael James, kid's just amazing. I mean, 20 carries, 146 yards, broke a 58-yard touchdown run, 3 touchdowns in the game. You also got Kenyon Barner, 8 carries for 42 yards, which is a great compliment. You take one back out, you put another back in with just as much speed and elusiveness as LaMichael James. Stanford's defense outplayed. I mean, they could not tackle. This team from Oregon is very, very fast. And it really gives a shout out to LSU for being able to run with each of these athletes. I mean, they've been They were shut down completely against LSU, but against every other team, you can just see the difference of the speed with Oregon all over the field, hurry up offense. I mean, it's just been constant all season. Ever since the LSU loss, you have to look at the fact that Oregon has been completely running teams off of the field. Their defense is not that great, and that's why I thought Stanford was going to win that game, because I thought that Oregon would be pushed around as they were in the national championship game against Auburn. I mean, Stanford has a very big football team, and their tackles are basically first round draft picks. They're guaranteed first round draft picks. So when you're looking at that versus Oregon, and they're not really the biggest team, and you look at the fact that LSU pushed them around as well, I thought Stanford would go in there and push them around, but they just couldn't. Oregon was feisty. They made plays. They jumped on opportunities. They forced turnovers, and they capitalized on those turnovers. I mean, just bottom line is that Stanford has to go back to the drawing board, and David Shaw, the head coach, is going to have to really look at his team and ask what happened against Oregon. And it's simple to see: turnovers. And Andrew Luck, I mean, he's a good quarterback. He made some excellent throws, but Oregon just wanted it more. So after this break, we're gonna go to the NFL. We're gonna see what happened this week in the NFL. Looks like people have caught on to Cam Newton, and looks like the 49ers are very, very legit. We'll be right back after this break.